I didn't really start.
What's up, you guys? Yep, we started, babe. Here we are.
Good to go.
Good to go. All right, guys. Happy Wednesday. Happy February 23rd. We are back for the weekly live show. In case you haven't figured that out, we will be here every Wednesday, 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, maybe 11:01. If you're new to the group, I'm Courtney Miracle. This is my husband, Brandon Miracle. And we are the Miracle, so just kidding. And we're very silly usually on the beginning of these videos, so if you jump on, give us a hello, give us a hi. How's your morning been, honey?
A little chaotic. Very good morning. The weather down here has been a little crazy, which I don't know if anyone else knows. If you're in Colorado, like it's literally 5 degrees, but the weirdest thing is it's 5 degrees and the snow is melting. You notice that? Like the roads are all like super wet and everything else. Like 5 degrees, I would assume it'd be frozen and ice packed. They're melting. It's the weirdest thing.
If you're in Colorado, though, if you haven't been to Colorado, the beauty of Colorado is it's like 5 degrees and it's snowing, but it's still sunny and it's beautiful. And if you don't know that I love snow a lot. So
I don't like the cold, though.
I don't like being cold, so I drink more coffee and wear more layers. But as long as you're prepared, it works. All right, you guys. So a couple housekeeping things we always do first. If you missed the workshop last week, so we did the 3-day workshop. We do this about every 8 weeks. It was just 3 days of knowledge and questions and busting a bunch of myths, because that's the point of this group, you guys, is that we really want to get you out of diet culture. We want to get you into really good health. We want to get you crushing your goals, having better, better performance in the gym, and truthfully, like just being the best version of yourself. Hi, Kat, who is crushing the best version of herself.
Performance crushing in the gym.
Right. Made it. So if you missed that, go watch that. It was 3 days. They are in the recorded videos. They're also tagged in the top of this. So if you watch those and you have questions, you can post questions there or post them here. The goal of this live show every week is to answer your questions. Okay. So we have some winners. Uh-oh, Jen has my phone. I'm going to have to announce the winners at the end of this because Jen doesn't have my phone, but Jen sent me the names on my phone, which is where we're recording. So I do know Michael won and Lenore won, and I don't remember who the third one was. So I will post in the comments who won from the 3-day last week, and it's not in there. It's in Boxer, and we'll get with you guys. So you guys all won a 20-minute coaching call, so you can ask us all the questions that pertain to your life. What else? Anything other housekeeping? If you didn't notice that the next 8-week shift has gone live, it is live. So we are in week 7. Kat is one of our amazing people in the current shift 8-week program. The next one starts on March 7th and goes through April 30th. Okay, it is going to be amazing, life-changing. I love all of the ahas that we've been seeing. It's an incredible coaching program where you really go through all the pillars of your health. So mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And hopefully come out with a huge understanding of how to feed your body, how to take care of your mind and your spirit and your soul, and really just feel amazing.
I did see somebody was asking of like, are the testimonials in these interviews that we've been doing legit? I think a lot of people are kind of seeing of like, there's no way these conversations and these testimonials are actually legit. And I'm here to tell you,
yes, that's a good compliment.
Yes, they're absolutely 100% legit, is on the sense of not only people what they're experiencing physically, for so many of our shifters that are going through, have experienced the physical change they've been longing for so long and trying all the different diet things that have been out there over the years, but also at the same time frame is really what the kind of the basis of what our mission is with this is to help people create a different relationship with food and themselves, right? Because we're big believers, if you do something in one area of your life, it's going to reflect in other areas of your life. And so for most of us, what we've been taught when it comes to essential diet culture and restriction and lack and slashing calories and all those other things is if you're doing it in one area of your life, you're also probably restricting and you're probably living in lack and you're not living in abundance and you're doing these other things in other areas of your life. And, for a lot of the parents out there, I don't know how many of you guys out there that have your own children or you are a mentor or a coach or whatever for younger people. If you can also solidify and create a better relationship and a better understanding when it comes to essentially the biggest thing that we need other than water, right? Like if you can create a better understanding and a better relationship with that and essentially lead by example. And because unfortunately for so many of our shifters, it's like, well, I've been on a diet since I've been like 8 years old, right? It's like, we have an 8-year-old. I could not imagine like coming into our household and like, all right, Carson, you know what, we're going to get you on this dietary plan at 8 years old. And it's like, well, what type of relationship is that building for the rest of your life when it comes to food? And so our goal...
What does that do to your worthiness?
Absolutely, right? And so when it comes to like the testimonials and the interviews, you guys, they are fully 100% legit. And I mean, for all the shifters that have been able to post and share their experience, we're very grateful for that. But at the end of the day, you guys, our mission here is to create a shift from lack to abundance, from restriction and taking away to adding and expansion.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you guys asked, like, are they legit? I think that's a cool compliment. Like, this can't be real, right? And I think the biggest change we've seen and the biggest thing we've seen with our shifters is that we said in the beginning, and we'll say this about the next program, we're going to give you some of what you want and some of what you think you need and a lot of what you don't even know that you need, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so, I mean, this week there's just been so many cool, like, we're talking about identities and stories. So yes, we do nutrition, but there's this way broader piece. And you've heard in the testimonials, people are like, I came in for nutrition and food, and that's not at all what I actually needed, or you know, like the breakthroughs are happening. Yes, they're physically better, but the breakthroughs are happening in these other parts,
right? The nutrition sounded like the icing on the
cake.
It's
like, oh, that was a good bonus, but they're like, wow, I had this, I uncovered this like underlying identity that's been keeping me stuck in these stories, and like this, I mean, literally, you guys, I read what they post in the group because we share inside of the group, and like, what you guys understand too, the private community is so supportive and it's so engaged and it's so just like, people are like, hey, I had this realization about my dad when I was a kid, and like, it's cool stuff, like really, really big stuff. And if you haven't listened to us much, like, I believe fully, I mean, I had an eating disorder, I believe fully that like a lot of physical weight is emotional weight, and we don't give it merit, and we don't look at those things, and we look at those things, all of the other stuff gets to change, and it gets to be easy, right? And we say that all the time, like, what if it got to be easy? And 99% of people look at us like, it's not easy. I've been beating my head against the wall for the last 20 years. It's not easy. I did that. But it does get to be easy, and it does get to be simple. And so hearing, I mean, I told Brandon, we were listening to one of the testimonials, Jen was talking to one of the shifters, and I was like, literally like tearing up, because hearing her say back what we've been pouring in, and hearing her really say like, this has changed everything. And then she was like, meditation has changed my life. And I'm like, yes, we're winning, because meditation changed my life. So like, all of those things are real. And if you're like, this sounds too good to be true, it's not, right? We also added a money back guarantee, because so many people have tried so many things that don't work, right? It's a conditional guarantee. Like, you have to do the work. You have to show up. You can't just You get to
do the work.
Yeah. And work is not work, but like, you have...
You get to grow. You get to build upon yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if you do that and you're like, I didn't get enough value, like, we'll give your money back 100%. Like, we're that confident, right? We just walked through this with 60 people. We know that it's shifting and it's changing lives, right? And so Kat said space to be vulnerable and grow. And it's true. It's just, it's so cool. So we're going to jump into the questions. I think we better start going, or I have a page of notes and he has a page of notes. And so we've talked about supplements before. So we're going to get out a supplement guide so that you guys can just have that. So it's, what do we take? What do we believe in? You know, and again, we're not like we believe in supplements as a supplement to good nutrition, but we'll share with you guys what we take, what we believe in, what we've seen has worked, right? And then it's completely up to you what you decide for yourself. Happy to answer questions. Like, I do believe if you have the basis down, supplements can absolutely help, but they're not the magic pill.
No, I think our biggest stance is because, yet again, I think for most people that walk in through our doors initially have the misconception of, oh, I'm exercising, or I want to lose weight, or I want to increase my performance, or I want to get stronger. That means I have to go to GNC or go to Vitamin Shopping, go get the supplements. What's the supplement I should have? The first thing you should be doing is eating real food. The first thing, we always lead with food first. All right. And then if we're covering all our bases and we may need different time frames and different things to come in that can supplement that, that's where we want to meet these things. Because, I mean, trust me, there's stuff that we take every single day that has stood the test of time, that has been very beneficial to us. Everyone's individual in their own regard. But at the same time frame of that, you guys, if you're not eating real food, if you're not drinking water, if you're not getting sunlight, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're overstressed, if you're having all these other lifestyle imbalances and struggles, you can take the best supplement of all time. You're literally going to flush your money down the toilet. All right. I mean, trust me, in our group, we've had one of our shifters literally was like, you know what? You've saved me so much money, because I used to, in all the other programs, go out and they would recommend like this laundry list of supplementation. No, we want to give your body the things that it has evolved with, so it can recognize, so it can understand what to do on a hormonal level of like having to regulate different things. And if at that time frame we want to be able to promote other functions, or we're seeing other things come through the line, then we can add other things to the equation. But if you're not having food first, you're missing basically the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think too, when you talk about like going to GNC, supplements aren't regulated, and so the companies that the supplements we take and the companies we take them for, like we know the research, we know the background, we know the scientists, like we know the stuff, and we know that what they say is in it, what they say is in it is actually in it, because half the time what they say in supplements isn't even in it, which is why you don't feel the difference. Okay, so we're gonna get that out too. Okay, the next one I have is, I'm really interested in the shift in the 8-week program, but I'm already doing a certain diet. Can I incorporate that, and what would that look like? You want me to take that?
No, yeah, absolutely. I think there's, when it comes to the program that we elicit you guys, is yet again, it's not just a diet program, okay? Like
quarter of it.
Yes, like it's a portion of it. Like we have people that have been going through it and doing it in following a ketogenic diet. We have other people that have been following a macro program. We have other people that are literally eyeballing and using the hand method to measure essentially their food. We have other people that are all plant-based, right? Like we have all different kinds of shifters following different protocols in which fits to their lifestyle. The way we go about doing it is we try to give the information from what we have seen stand the test of time, but also based off of the literature and the things that is most recent to the things that we have found. But more importantly, helping people really understand of like, okay, I'm not, whatever you are following, I want you to understand the reason and the purpose behind what you are doing, right? Because for most people, well, I want to follow a ketogenic diet. Okay, why? Well, because I've seen that's the best thing to lose weight. Well, maybe not, right? Like for somebody under X circumstances, that might do the exact opposite of that. Mm-hmm. Same thing for somebody on the other standpoint. Okay, that might be a good place for us to start and a good place for us to learn and get some data to see what's available for you to get the best from, right? So it's on the basis of, it's not just whether or not it's good or bad, but more importantly, what we come from is understanding the purpose and the why behind what you are doing.
Yeah. And I think, again, for us, there's two really big pieces when it comes to nutrition, right? It's why are you doing it? Having awareness around what are you doing, right? And so if you're not like following any specific plan, that's fine. But like, what are you doing in your life? What do you eat every day? Why do you eat it? How does it fill your needs? Like there's a big piece of awareness first. And then again, shifting, right? We are not the all or nothing people, because we've seen it time and time again fail, right? So it's like, can I shift this? Can I do that? Can I drink more water? Like, can I bring that awareness? And even if you have something that's working great, that's awesome. You don't have to change that. But the other piece is like the bigger pieces, right? So we say there's 4 pillars in our program, right? So it's physical, which is your nutrition, your sleep, some of your stress, right? There's your mental, which is mindset, but also mindfulness and connection. Like, how is your mind and your body connected? Because it's learning that kind of stuff that makes a really, really, really big difference on what you eat, how you eat, why you eat it, how you show up in the world, all of those things, right? So physical, mental, emotional, that's the piece that I would say 99% of coaches won't touch, because they're like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about that. And to us, that's the missing piece for so many of us is it's like, what need is that food meeting? What's your identity? What's your stories? Where can you be curious? Like, where's your connection? Where's your congruency? Like, that's a lot of what goes into our program. And that's where a lot of the ahas are had, where people are like, oh, like, I emotionally eat. Okay, well, what does that mean? And where did it come from? And how do we shift it, right? And it's learning to love all the parts of us.
Well, and it's also with that is if you can understand that, it eliminates the whole self-sabotage story, right? Because I think that's what we see more times than not is I always do so good and then I fall off the rails, right? Well, yet again, if you don't understand that and understand essentially your own internal makeup, it looks like self-sabotage, but in all reality, you're just following the rules for which you have applied for yourself, right? And without understanding this, you are left in the merry-go-round or the yo-yo cycle over and over and over.
We talked last week about the pendulum, right? It pulls out, and then you don't know what to do out here, so it snaps right back, right? And so, sorry to cut you off, but it's that if we move all of it, right, and we do all of these things together, because again, you'll hear us say this, nothing is compartmentalized. The way you think, the way you breathe, the way you feel, the way you eat, the way you show up in the world, all of those things affect your health, right? And you cannot look at one part, but you can. But you can't be successful at really growing and being the best version of yourself if you're not looking at all of those pieces, right? So, and then the last one is spiritual, which again, for me, it's a God, universe, whatever that is. We're not preaching anything of that sort, but getting connected to a higher source. I do believe once you start to understand that you are the co-creator with a greater power in this world, life gets to be way easier. Oh, this doesn't have to be hard. I had to take a step. The universe takes 20,000 steps, right? But it's slowing down and being quiet, right? Which is where the meditation and breath work comes in. Is it's so many of us are just in this hustle and go, and and there's so many stressors that happen just in that energy. But it's actually slowing down and going, I have time for myself. I have time to connect. What do I want in this world? Who do I want to be? Why am I here, right? Bigger questions than what does protein do for my body? Right, we need to know that too. But when we couple all these things together, you see this just amazing growth and health and happiness, right? And so it doesn't matter what diet you're doing. All of those other pieces are going to be most likely things that you've never, I would say 90% of the people in our group have never looked at any of these pieces, and they're really, really cool, and they're really, really fun.
Well, and I think on a spiritual standpoint, you guys, is not only in addition to what Courtney was talking about, but also, to me, spiritual also means your connection to other people.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just you getting locked away in solitude and everything else. It's more on the side of because our thought is we're better collectively than we are individually, right? I think I saw a research paper that was just studied that tested this out of when we look at ourselves individually, when especially your language, if you use the words I and me a lot, you're actually more susceptible to having a higher risk for mortality at a younger age, right? When you actually have connection and you use we and us and that type of language, you actually have you actually live longer, potentially, right? There's actually research that was just published that if you want the study, I'll look it up. But essentially I just came across that yesterday. But there is not that yet again. There's not the basis of just these are all good, happy, flowing thoughts, which is important. But there's actual research showing that these things actually make a difference in our lives.
We're tribal people, right? And that's also why we do this as a group. Could you work with us one-to-one? Absolutely. Would you get benefit out of it? Absolutely. But do you get more benefit by having accountability buddies and a community and other people that are sharing the same experiences? You do. Absolutely. 1,000,000%. There's a reason we do this inside of community. Okay. Do you have more? Okay. Well,
you got your list now.
I have a list. I'm going to let you answer this one. So someone asked, what's the deal with K-tape? Which is, you can talk about what K-tape is, and does it really work?
So essentially on there, you guys have been seeing this a lot because I think a lot of you guys come from an active background, whether that be OTF, whether that be Peloton, whether that be CrossFitters, whether that be functional fitness athletes, whether that be sports, whatever you're doing, right? For most of us, we're in this group, I assume we're moving in some fashion. And so I had the question come up of hey, is KT tape beneficial? So essentially what KT tape does, you guys, is essentially what it does. So
explain what it is first.
So basically when you look at essentially your internal environment, there's a portion of your body that literally infuses from almost every single portion of your brain or your body. Sorry, I'm thinking about your brain. Is essentially what's called fascia. All right, so that's integrated from your bone all the way up to your muscle, to your ligaments. You can find it in your lungs. You can literally almost find it in every single element of your body. Now, what oftentimes happens is whether it be a mechanical thing, whether it be flexibility, whether it be a mobility, whether it be a strength and balance thing, is oftentimes our joints get out of essentially what we call centration. Okay, so what we mean by that is essentially alignment. All right, so if I'm looking at my shoulder, okay, I'm wearing a black shirt, so this is gonna be a really good example. But essentially, ideally, if I'm looking at centration, the shoulder is a ball and socket joint. All right, what happens is because, or over time, whether first off, unideal breathing habits. If you haven't heard us talk about this, it has come up in every single conversation because it's the thing you do over 20,000 times a day that is promoting your posture and essentially your promotion of your internal environment, your digestive function, all those things. But essentially, if my breathing habit and my breathing pattern is off, it's going to affect my centration. Next thing on there is if I essentially have flexibility issues, I can't move my arm through a full passive range of motion, of mobility restriction, stability restriction, maybe my right arm is less strong than my left, that's going to promote that as well. Well, when that gets out of essential centration, I can use KT tape as a way of assisting that, okay? Now, I'm going to use my words.
Pick them wisely.
I'm going to try to pick them wisely because I don't want you guys to hear of like, that's going to solve my problem. To me, oftentimes when it comes to orthotics, inserts, KT tape, knee sleeves, wrist wraps, whatever, is oftentimes they can be beneficial, right? Like it's the same thing of using a weight belt. There's plenty of research that shows that if you understand how to use it and you put on a weight belt, you can help create better positioning when it comes to core stability. But what I've also seen is people get married to the equipment and they all of a sudden don't fix the underlying root of the issue that's the problem, and it will fix it for a short amount of time. Oh, I'm cured. And then 2 weeks, a month, however long later, that disorder gets worse, and it doesn't matter how much KT tape, it doesn't matter how much my footwear, it doesn't matter how much whatever I do. Sooner or later, that joint becomes overused, it gets overpromoted, and that's when injury happens, that's when overuse happens, that's when something happens that's going to take you out, okay? So at the end of the day, your biggest thing is finding out the root cause and then fixing it from that level, okay? But KT tape can be a way of helping with that, all right? So essentially what KT tape is essentially kind of the same way of allowing us to pull that joint back into centration, okay? So there's different methods of doing that, but essentially if I'm rolled forward, so essentially my shoulder is internally rotated and my shoulder is kind of out of that socket, I can use the KT tape to kind of help pull the shoulder back into external rotation and get that into engaged, kind of like the same thing as if I got my muscles to contract that might be inhibited or less strong and pull it back into position. Okay, same thing goes with a knee, because oftentimes I think a lot of you guys are avid runners, so we experience a lot of patellar tracking issues, patellar femoral pain. It's known as runner's knee, potentially jumper's knee. Those type of things we see a lot, and usually with those things, you guys, it's there. I mean, there's a list of things that we can look at, but are we having mechanical issues? Is it an issue coming from the foot? Is it an issue coming from the ankle? Is it an issue coming from essentially imbalances of strength, right? Because yet again, if I don't identify these things, I can use KT tape or I can do whatever to essentially put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole that's going to mitigate the signs for a short amount of time, but sooner or later, especially if it's a mechanical thing or essentially a imbalance thing, it's only going to promote that further as I go down the line. So it can be a useful tool, but I also want to really, really, really put out there, you guys, it's better for us to, and that's why assessing, it's not just guessing. Like when people walk through our doors, for us as coaches on a strength and conditioning realm, we want to assess and not just guess, right? It's not just throwing stuff on the wall and like seeing it, yes, and not seeing if this is just going to stick, right? We want to be able to see, okay, well, for you, these are the symptoms that are happening on there. This is the route we can take and get us through there. So, I mean, we're working with a couple of our shifters right now to kind of help them through this. If you are experiencing pain and you are experiencing these things, you guys, and this maybe speak to you, let us know. We're working on putting some things that we could do virtually to kind of help some people out with this.
And I will say, like, I'm going to toot Brandon's horn for him. He's ridiculously good at assessments, and we can do them virtually. So if you're like, I got this thing, because this is what I will say. I've had my share of injuries, right? I got like a shoulder thing that's gone on for like 10 years. It gets better, gets worse. And it's because I'm not doing the right things to take care of it. So that's all on me. But at one point, I had a rotator cuff that was slightly torn. So I was getting work done, right? Like I was getting massage and I was getting soft tissue and I was getting stretching. So I was having things done to get to the root problem. And then often they would tape the shoulder to help it last longer, right? So it would stay after they got it back to where they wanted it to be, right? And I've tried K-tape, like I had some plantar fasciitis. I'm just gonna be totally honest, I did it myself. I don't think it did any good, right? So I think K-tape, there's a, like, first, are you working on the root? Is someone actually assessing and adjusting and trying to actually get the joints and the muscles back to where they need to be, and then having it applied? Like, to me, K-taping yourself, unless you're really, really good at it, you're probably not going to see a ton of benefit, which may be why you're like, does this stuff actually work?
Well, and
That's
the reason
my
why
personal opinion.
Well, and the reason why they did that with Courtney on there is because it's two fronts. We need to get the joint and the muscle, or essentially the joint, back into the position it's essentially, I hate to say should, but essentially is going to operate the best. But what we're doing there is also telling the brain that it can function in this position, because oftentimes, yet again, the body's trying to work for us. And so if it's out of position, it's trying to get the job done in which you're asking it to do. But oftentimes your body, your brain, your nervous system is the most powerful supercomputer in the world. And every time you move, you are downloading data. All right, so like that's important to understand. So if you're in the midst of a workout, it's not just whether or not you get the workout done. It's okay, what did you do in the midst of that workout to promote the patterns that you are working from, right? Like if I'm trying to get stronger squatting, but my squat pattern's all over the place, my knees are caving in, my back is rounding, great, you lifted more weight. But you actually probably did yourself more of a disservice because you just downloaded more data to promote those non-ideal movement patterns. And so that's ultimately what is also the benefit of K-tape, is essentially that it just helps you get that joint and get the position of that arm or whatever you're trying to do in the position, so your body can understand how to utilize that in that position.
Awesome. Okay, hopefully that helped. Okay, we've been hearing this a lot. I'm going through menopause, or I'm in perimenopause and I'm gaining weight. What can I do about weight gain and the changes I see in my body as I go through menopause?
You're asking me. So, I think
you'll never have to go through menopause.
I'll get to go through it with you.
And it's going to be fine because we know lots of good things.
So, I mean, I think the important thing on this, you guys, is to really, when we go to talk about things from a nourishment standpoint, okay, is when we're talking about menopause, when we're talking about these kind of things, is really any sort of health standpoint, oftentimes we're talking about hormonal balance, right? And obviously when we're going through menopause, we're going to talk about a lot of different fluctuations, a lot of different hormonal elements. And so, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a magic silver bullet, like you do this and it's going to make it the like smoothest transition ever. But I think it's also on the standpoint is, what are we doing to help kind of regulate the system, right? I think that's the way we look at it is if we can allow the body to regulate the system and get it into the most homeostatic and regulated systematic, it's going to be able to run its course a lot smoother, right? And so, because if I'm a person that may be having a lot of fluctuations in my hormonal balance all day long, right? Whether it be a spike in insulin, my blood sugar crashes, and I'm getting a lot of hormonal responses here. I'm in a lot of stress, so I'm getting a lot of cortisol. I'm getting a lot of, my thyroid functions all over the place. My adrenal system's all messed up. Well, if all of a sudden I throw menopause on top of that, it really is probably not going to respond very well, right?
It's a exclamation point on the end of a problem that's probably already in existence.
Yeah, so that's why it's looking at, not just on the sense of like, what are we doing on a day-to-day basis, but also looking at, like Courtney talked about, the pillars of health, right? Like, where are you on in your mindfulness practices, right? Like if you're at a massive amount of stress, and yet again, the people that we tend to work with is like, what's your day-to-day look like? How much stress is going on? Well, it's not that bad. Well, okay.
Because you're go-getters and you're
yes.
high achievers, and you just like come to the fact that like this massive amount of stress is normal.
Yes.
And just because you can handle it, it doesn't mean it's normal or it's helping you get to the best.
No, like, I mean, we get like people all the time. Well, okay, I haven't slept more than like 3.5 hours in like 2 months. My kids are all over the place. I'm not only taking care of them, but now I'm working overtime, and then I'm going to volunteer for this.
And I'm training for a marathon.
Yes, and I'm training for a marathon. Oh, and by the way, I'm in a calorie restriction because I'm trying to lose weight, and I don't know why the hell it's going on. And then all these other like avalanche of things that we're throwing on top of ourselves, right? So yet again, it's looking on the side of like, okay, what is my external environment dictating to my internal environment? Mm-hmm. What's my nourishment looking like? How much real food are you eating every single day? And what I mean by real food is not driving up to the drive-thru and getting it made by somebody who may or may not get it from a chemical plant or not. I mean, it's something that actually came from the earth that was possibly living and breathing and grew up from nature, that if you put it on a shelf would actually mold and go bad in a week, right? Like, how much of that food are you having? How much actual water are you drinking, right? Like, all these things, if you haven't kind of heard a pattern from us, all come back to the same fundamental components of health and wellness, right? And so if we can get those things usually solidified and consistent, right? Like, not doing them every once in a while or once a week, but if you can get that consistent and learn from your body of like, okay, when I do this, this tends to promote this, then we might be able to regulate these things a little bit more as you go through this just natural function of life.
Well, and I think too, on the aging process, like, I'm a big believer in this, and especially the older I get, is like, a lot of times what we see, and we talked about this a lot last week, is that we lose a lot of muscle, especially as women, as we get older. And it's not just because we're losing muscle because we're getting older, but we're not doing the things that we used to do, right? We're no longer challenging ourselves. We're not lifting heavy weights. So our metabolic rate has gone down. Again, I believe most people gain weight because their metabolic rate goes down and they're in a calorie restriction and everything's all jacked up, right? So, like, and I've shared this before, but I remember I had a guy who was 89, and I was like, he was selling him a snowmobile, and I said, well, what's the secret? And he's like, well, you get old because you stop doing things. You don't stop doing things because you get old, right? So it's also looking at, like, as you're going through these phases in life, like, just in general, like, what have you changed, and where can you go back to? Can you have more fun? Can you get more exercise? Can you lift heavier weights? Like, how can you be more like a kid, right? Like, we bought a little mini trampoline for our kids, like one of those little bouncy ones, which is actually really good for your lymphatic system. It also makes you smile. So I walked by this morning, I was like, no one was here. I was like, I should jump on the tramp. I jumped on the tramp, and I was like, I really feel better. But it's those things, right? Are you having more fun? Are you challenging your body? Like, what are you doing to take care of yourself, right? I do believe, I haven't gone through menopause, but like, there are things that happen. But again, if you can have all of these other things, all of these other pieces, your lymphatic system, your stress, your nutrition, if you get all that stuff in a really good place, it can be a process that doesn't have to be so frustrating and something that you feel like you don't have any control over. I think last one we'll go through really quick that I had was, where do I get free meditations? Which cues me to be like, I should be making more meditations for our shifters, which we'll get to that. But there's a couple that I listen to on YouTube. I will post them because now, of course, what I'm going to tell you guys, I can't find them. But I searched for guided meditation. One of the ones that I listen to, her name is, oh my gosh, I had it till I just went to tell you. But I'll post them for you guys. But YouTube has a ton of really, really good meditations. There are people that have, meditation sites that are fairly reasonable. I think it's finding someone that you align with. Jess Shepherd, that's her name. I really like female voices. So it's just but yeah, YouTube is a great place. I'll post some of my favorites. And hopefully that helps.
One thing regarding the meditation, you guys, I think for some people, and I'll probably put myself in that boat, is oftentimes when I hear meditation, it's like, whoa, well, let's pump the brakes here a little bit. That's a little bit outside my comfort zone. And I will say, one thing that I've been trying to do this morning didn't go very well because it was behind and got right into my day really, really quickly. But if there's one thing that we try to really, really promote, you guys, is starting your day in a place that you can set your day from a place of intention and coming from a place of owning your morning, Because if you get from so many people that we find is we get up, we go right into chaos, we go right into overwhelm, we go right into the place where we don't feel like we have any control. And then all of a sudden we're back and we go from sleeping to all of a sudden this heightened anxiety state where we got to get the kids ready, we got to go to work, we got to get in traffic, we got to do these things. And so we're big on the side of, trust me, initially on this, it might not be the most comfortable thing in the world. But if you can allow yourself just 10, 15 minutes to get up early. Like I try to make it a point to get up a couple of hours early before I actually have to get going and moving. But allow yourself, time and quiet, right? For some of you guys, meditation, I think oftentimes meditation gets a bad sequence of like, well, I got to go sit on the side of a hill and do these kind of things and chant and everything else. No, meditation can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people, right? Like it might be sitting and listening to somebody. It might be going for a walk around the block. It might be hanging out with your kids, but it's allowing yourself to be, I think to me, is be present and be mindful and be able to really have a conversation with yourself. Because I think for so many people is we have such a negative relationship with ourselves that we don't like to sit with ourselves. Mm-hmm. We don't like that. I mean, yet again, the reason why I say this is because that's where I was, is I don't like to, my mind's always going, but really that was a protector because I didn't like to necessarily acknowledge the things that were coming through and be able to have a conversation of understanding like, well, is that real? Is it true? Is it mine? Right? And then understanding like those conversations that I'm ignoring are actually the things that are driving my day-to-day life of overwhelm and my decision-making and everything else. And so me getting quiet and me doing those things isn't like chanting and affirmations and those type of things.
I'm going to get Brandon to chant. That's my new challenge.
but it's more on the side of being able to see of like, okay, if this is an area that, I mean, yet again, there's more research that comes out, and I will tell you that every mentor and coach that we've ever had, this is something that every single one of them has implemented in some fashion or some form. So if people that are experiencing success that basically 100% across the board are implementing, perhaps it might not be that bad to dabble in some capacity.
Well, yeah, and I think, like, when we talk about meditation, like, yes, you can sit in, like, pure silence, and, like, I don't do that. Like, I'm still not there, right? There are days where I do breath work, which is more active, but to me, meditation is almost like guided visualization. The ones that I really, really enjoy, like, they take me on a journey to explore where I want to go. They're positive, reaffirming energies, right? It's that kind of stuff that I prefer. Some people like to be just in total silence or walking or whatever. But again, like Brandon said, it's the presence. I will say something, though, about chanting. I don't chant, but not that I'm opposed to it, but I've done some sounding meditations that are incredibly cool, yet feel ridiculous when you start. But there's so much to be said about like energy being stuck inside of your body, right? Your throat chakra, for a lot of you, of like, if you feel like I don't speak my mind, your throat chakra is blocked. And as silly as it sounds, like going and sitting and doing an meditation where it's just like, like you feel really ridiculous. It's so therapeutic. It's crazy, right? And if you can think about what is stuck in my body, right? Like energetically, you have things stuck. And if you feel like the good can't come in and the lightness can't come in, it's because my mentor always says, like, you're emotionally constipated. You have all this negative stuff weighing you down. You just need to get it out, whether it's words, whether it's movement, whether whatever. Like intuitive dance is another way that people meditate, right? Just like let your body move. And so open your mind to trying some stuff and being like, I might feel totally crazy. Like I did an meditation for quite a while, but I could only do it when like nobody was awake because like Brandon would come around the corner and be like, what are you doing, right? But you just be open to other things. And as silly as it may seem, if you have some openness to it, you will be surprised at what it can do for you. Okay. All right, what you got?
I think go from the bottom up here. So, saw this question come up of essentially, I'm doing all the things, I'm losing weight, but as I'm losing, and I'm so kind of a backstory here. I've been heavy for a good portion of my life, and I've started losing weight finally, but I'm actually feeling more insecure now that I'm losing weight. And so one thing, yet again, going through the SHIFT program, you guys, is we're in our 7th week right now, and we've been talking a lot about identities. We've been talking a lot about who you believe you are, right? Because it's not just what you do, but it's more importantly who you believe you are that is going to essentially direct the decisions that you're going to make. Your values are going to be the kind of the director of the path, but who you believe, your beliefs are going to essentially be the actionable things that are going to come through that, right? And so it's on the sense of what usually happens in this, and this is where, yet again, self-sabotage and all those things come through, is, well, if I believe myself to be this, but I'm taking action that's going to elicit this, my congruent message for myself of who I believe I am is over here. At some point, even though I'm getting the results of what I walk through the door for, I'm going to move my way back over here. Okay. Now, a way that I like to, an example of this is, Courtney and I were on the highway with a buddy of mine, and we were driving down the highway. Well, we were on the road, and all of a sudden he got cut off by a car in front of him. Well, it was a brand new Tesla that just got out and everything else. And the thing that came out of his mouth was, "What a rich asshole." Right? Sorry, my language, but that was what he came out with. Okay. Now, this friend of mine, he works very, very hard. He has his own company on the side, does construction, and is wanting to essentially promote. Obviously, he has his own company, so he's trying to promote business and wealth for himself. But what he attaches to essentially money is being an a-hole. All right. So he will work his tail off to essentially promote financial freedom and independence. But what he unconsciously, even consciously, is associating to having money and freedom is being an a-hole. Now, what's the likelihood that he's going to continue down the path of working and creating wealth and everything else? He'll probably continue working, but somewhere in there, he's going to self-sabotage himself, spend money unknowingly, do whatever, so he doesn't get to that level that he associates with being an a-hole. Right? And so the same thing goes when we're trying to go down this path of weight loss or health or whatever we're doing, is I'm going to go down this path, but I actually may feel more insecure because it's conflicting with who I believe I am and also with what I associate that version of me having to be, right? Because if maybe I might have been overweight for such a long time, but my association with somebody who is thinner or an athlete or whatever, is there a self-infused mean person, jackass, whatever that may be, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to take on attributes of that person. Oh no, who am I? I don't want that, and so I start to potentially feel even more insecure.
Well, and I think, I mean, when you talk about that, like we've seen it over the years of like, oh, the skinny biatches or whatever, and you know, it's like you identify like I'm in this group, this is who I am, and then if I start to go to that group, like what am I going to do? But I want to say a couple other things because I think there's more. I think there's other things that pop up. So I think some of it is attention, right? You start to get attention that you've never had and you don't know what to do with it. And you're like, oh, now I'm insecure because people are noticing and they're commenting on it, right? It's a worthiness thing. They're saying like, oh, you're looking really good. What are you doing? And then you're like, oh, I don't know if I wanted this attention. And you don't think you're capable of it. But then you're also like, oh man, people are watching. Now there's an outside pressure, right? Like you probably started it for you, but then there's an outside pressure, right? So I think some of that happens. But I also want to say, I have worked with a lot of clients that have put on weight subconsciously because they had some kind of sexual trauma or abuse, and subconsciously they believe if they're a bigger human, they couldn't be hurt again. Like a lot of women that I've worked with have had that. So if that is part of your story, you need to look, you need to have someone help you, you need to have a coach, you need to have a counselor actually walk you through like what was going on there so that you can look at that and you can really truly understand it, and then you can allow yourself to release those stories and release that weight. So that is a huge thing that we've seen. I've seen it time and time again, and it's something that most women that go through that don't realize that's that byproduct of the trauma. So next one.
Let's see here.
What's our time check?
Coming up on time. Let's see here. Oh, so kind of, I think it falls in line not the same exact thing, but essentially, I keep finding myself binging. All right, so I've been going down this path, and I've been really, really good, but I find, especially on the weekends, I find myself binging. All right, now, Just to clarify, one of the big, yet again, there's a lot of reasons why we started this group and this mission. But more importantly, what we over the years, what we see with traditional dieting is it restricts your biology and it works against your psychology. Okay. And so that's why time and time again, it's the roller coaster and the yo-yo dieting side point of like, I tried that, it worked, but I fell off of it. Well, yet again, if you are not able to keep doing it and it is not sustainable, it didn't work. Like, I'm sorry, but like it didn't work. Like, it may have promoted the thing in which you wanted out of it, but if it's not sustainable, it didn't work. All right. Now, the reason why we end up binging is there's a lot of different factors that could be into this, but it could be on essentially, we'll go to the first one of restricting your biology. Okay. So if I'm calorie cutting and I'm going into restriction, and what most of us do, most diets, they over restrict, right? Because they want to promise you the quickest results possible because it's good marketing. And if a 500 calorie deficit is good, well, 1,000 calorie deficit has to be really, really good, right? Well, yet again, that's working against your biology. And so then not only are we deficient in calories, but more importantly, we're deficient in the nutrients, right? Like the nutrient density and the things it requires you to actually stay breathing and functioning, all the other metabolic functions that have nothing to do with your caloric intake, but more on the side of like muscle contraction and breathing and hormonal function and all that. But if we're in essentially a deficient state, your body's going to find a way to get those things in. And so for how many of you guys that have gone through a diet program and then all of a sudden have massive cravings? Well, that's because, for one, you're probably deficient in those vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. And so once you do start opening the door to eat, your body's like, sweet, I'm going to have a free-for-all. Even though my emotional sense is I want to lose all the weight in the world, my physical sense of, hey, you need to stay living on this planet, I'm going to eat everything in sight without breaks. So on a biological standpoint, you don't necessarily have the self-control because your body's needing it in order to essentially survive.
Well, and I think, I mean, if you know my story, I was anorexic, I was bulimic for years, and there was a lot more that went into it, right? There was the restriction, right? I was really good at starving myself. That's not something you want to be proud of, but I was really good at it. And so you can do that for so long before, like Brandon said, you're just so hungry that you don't care. And then at that point, you're like, well, I'm just going to eat the stuff, right? But to me, there's that piece of like, if you forever tell yourself on an emotional standpoint, I can't have this, I can't have this, I can't have this. What are you telling yourself? Well, you're not worthy of eating. You're not worthy of food. You don't deserve this, et cetera, et cetera. And so like, for me, binging was emotional for a couple of reasons, right? So it was like, okay, well, I want the sugar, but I didn't want the guilt of having the sugar. So it was like, I'm just being totally honest here. It was like, well, it's just easier to eat it and then get rid of it. Like, I did that for my freshman year of college because I was so afraid of gaining weight. So there's that piece, right, of like, well, if I can just figure out a loophole, that'll be fine. But more often, you guys, when I looked back, like on my, for me personally, I have to look back at my own patterns. It was a control thing, right? Like in the times where I didn't feel like I had control of what was going on, freshman year in college, going through a divorce, you know, like I had these patterns of where it showed up for me. It was like, well, I don't have any control, but if I have this, like ice cream was a big thing for me. Mine was always sugar. If I have the sugar, it changed my state, right? Because I didn't understand that I was in a really bad place and I was no longer the creator of my world. So I was like, well, it changed my state. So all of a sudden I could change my state. I would feel better, right? That was where the sugar came in, right? That was where the emotional eating, I think most of the time, is about trying to change your state. But I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound really weird. And if you've never like been bulimic, for me, there was also a release, right? Like I had a lot of pent up emotions in my body that, sadly, as to say this, when I threw up, those emotions moved, right? And so like, look, and I would have never understood that. But like when I went through my program, I'd look back, I'm like, there was something therapeutic about throwing up. Don't go throw up because I'm saying this, but like what I didn't understand was there was this energy and this stuckness and this like need for a state change that happened when I binge and then threw up. And not saying that when you binge, you always throw up, but like you're trying to change your state and you're trying usually to get control of something that you feel like you don't have control of, right? So if you don't want to have to try to control your food, you get to learn and understand and create this beautiful relationship. And when that happens, like the binging just stops, right? Like it just it just stops. Like when you find food freedom, and that's my passion, right? Is like, how do we create food freedom? How do we have this understanding? How do we get in a relationship with our body and our emotions? When you can do that and understand that binging is never about the food. If you're really starving, it's kind of about like the hunger pains, but it's never about the food, right? So we can understand what is happening in that binge. How do I shift this? How do I have awareness? How do I stop judging myself about it? The binging can really just stop.
Well, and I think this also ties to on an exercise standpoint, right? Like maybe you're not binging when it comes to food. I did the other route. I binged on exercise, right? Like when when life felt like it was out of control, I went and worked out. I did 2 a day. I did 3 days. Nobody's going to outwork me, right? Like when I felt my sense of certainty was being challenged, my way of getting control was hitting the gym even harder, right? Like, we see it all the time of like, well, life's out of control, so I'm going to go to the 75 hard. Or life's out of control, I'm going to do a whole 30. And those things can be beneficial, right? Like just like anything else, but why are you doing it, right? Like, are you doing this to mask other areas of your life, right? And so when it comes to binging, is the same thing, whether it's food, whether it's exercise, whether it's in other areas of your life, is where are these things coming in? And the same thing when it comes to binging on an emotional, mental, and psychological standpoint is, are you also restricting your mental and emotional and psychological elements of what you're trying to meet your needs with, right? Like, yet again, Courtney can speak to this one. Like, we've gone through understanding values and understanding these kind of things. Like, for Courtney, freedom and independence is a big, big value on her moving towards this. And so she would go through all these different nutritional plans, right? Like, do X, Y, Z, do all these things. And she would see the benefits of it. But then it would start to restrict and conflict with her feeling like she was the one in control. She was the one making the decisions. She was the one being able to essentially live life the way that she wanted to, of making decisions at any time she wanted to, right? I want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, for sure.
And
I called that self-sabotage.
Yep.
I was like, oh, it's just self-sabotage. Maybe I don't want it bad enough. I guess I really don't care if I have a six-pack. Like, I said that a lot of times. Go ahead.
Well, and then so what we would do is sooner or later it would come to, she'd deviate off the plan and it wouldn't go to binging, but essentially it would just deviate in doing things that were not ideal according to the plan. And unknowingly it'd be masked as self-sabotage, not having enough willpower, not wanting it bad enough, all the other mumbo jumbo that gets thrown around there. But unknowingly, right? Like unknowingly, it's because, these are the things that are essentially the causation leading up to this. So yet again, it's not just the first layer of like, I don't know why the hell, well, stop binging, stop doing these things. Well, yet again, why are we doing it? What's the causation behind it?
Yeah. So I'm going to go over one more thing really, because I think it's a funny memory for me, but I think it really will stick for a lot of you guys. And if you're friends with me on Facebook, I'm going to probably do a live on this, but I posted on my personal page, like, hey, what questions do you have? And my friend Adam was like, can you tell me about calories, right? So that comment in and of itself isn't funny, but I want to share a story with you guys because I want you to see where you might be and where I was and where you can end up, right? So the story behind this is that we were on a ski trip. It was a bunch of friends and I, and Adam is one of my buddies. And I had a sugar-free Monster. And I remember this like it was yesterday. It was probably 20 years ago. I had a sugar-free Monster, and I was so confused by the nutrition label. And I was not dumb. I knew how to like look at this stuff because it had no calories, but it had 9 carbs. And I was like, I don't understand how it can have no calories and 9 carbs. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And so I was like freaking out about drinking this Monster. And we're on a ski trip, and we're supposed to be having fun. And I had a big lifted truck, and he was driving my truck. And I kept saying calories, 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 calories. Like, I was so obsessed, you guys. I was obsessed. I would lay in my bed and count my calories before I went to bed in my head, and I knew them all, and I probably could still tell you half of them. But, like, I was like, I don't understand this, and I'm going off. And, like, my friends are like, you sound like a crazy person, and this really doesn't matter. And, like, it's a sugar-free Monster. Who freaking cares, right? But all I cared about were the calories. And, like, Adam literally said to me, if you say calorie one more time, I'm going to kick you out of your truck. Your own truck. And like that has stuck with me because I know the energy and the like the freaking out that I had about calories and how like that ruined my day of skiing. Like I should have been like, I'm with friends on this beautiful day skiing, having an amazing day. I don't ski, I snowboard, but anyway, like but instead I was so focused on this one thing that really meant nothing in my life, right? But what it was restriction, and it was that dieting sense, and it was probably later that I binged. But anyway, I wanted to tell that calorie story because if you're in this place where you're like, I feel like I'm doing all the things and I'm counting all the calories and I'm trying to get it and it's not working. It's because you're not looking at the big enough picture, right? And so when I started looking at the big picture, I don't count calories, I don't count my macros, I don't do any of that anymore because I learned about it. But if you're in that energy, just do me a favor, join us for the 8-week program, because the life on the other side of not having to like freak out over if there's 9 carbs and a sugar-free Monster, I can't explain to you the freedom that comes with that. So just allow yourself to see past those things that you think might be so important, because it's probably actually something else. That's all I have.
I think that's good. I mean, yet again, if you haven't caught on, if you're just joining us and you're just joining this group, you guys, first off, thank you so much for being a part of this group. Honor the fact, I know there's a million different groups out there. And obviously being a part of this, hopefully we're here to serve, and we're here to provide information the best that we know how. But especially on this, you guys, is kind of going back to what we started off with is, if you haven't taken time to watch the interviews and watch and read the testimonials that are coming out, you guys, they're all true and they're all legit.
I want to say something else too. On those interviews, like if you guys are like, is this really real? The people that are being interviewed, our shifters, they will talk to you. You can message them. You can ask them questions. They will give you the straight up answers, right? They were not paid. This is not scripted. And they're happy to share their experience with you, because their goal is to show other people that it's possible to shift. So I just wanted to say that they've all said yes. Like, we're happy to like share our story and answer questions to people if you desire that.
Well, it's the ripple effect. Our big thing is teach one, teach two. Right? Of like when they go through their own learning and their transformation, like it's funny, like listening to them talk and have conversations now as opposed to week 1, the language, the things they use, how they express themselves, vastly different than what they were talking about week 1.
And let's be clear, guys, this is 7 weeks, right? This is not a year later, like where they're going to be in a year, but like this is 7 weeks. Like all of it can change your whole perspective, your language, the way you look and think and feel. It can change that fast. So like keep that in mind when Brandon says the way they talk is like, how fast did 7 weeks go by, right? Like it was the beginning of the year. But anyway.
So yeah, so I wanted to share that, you guys. I appreciate your guys' time. Yeah, if you have other questions, we'd love to answer them next week.
Yeah.
But I think
we'll post them. We'll
yes.
come back and answer them. We go spontaneously live. But if you want to know more about the 8-week program, again, it starts March 7th. The link is probably tagged, but we can drop the link. So let yourself take a look, see if it makes sense for you and where you are in your life. If it does, we'd love to have you. And again, our ask is always, if you have friends that you think would benefit from this group, please share the group with your friends, ask questions, be a part of it. We don't want to just be talking heads here. So we'd love to hear your questions, your feedback, and more than anything, we're just grateful that you're here.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Bye-bye.